Tabloids on their knees, Prince Harry's historic triumph over Rupert Murdoch's media empire. It began with whispers, but within hours it grew into thunder. News spread like wildfire across Britain and beyond. Rupert Murdoch's news group newspapers, the titan behind infamous tabloids like The Sun and the long-defunct News of the World, had capitulated. After years of denial, evasion and courtroom battles, they admitted guilt. They admitted hacking. They admitted tormenting. And above all, they apologized to Prince Harry, handing over what insiders call a whopping $12.3 million settlement. This was not just another legal victory. It was a rupture in the very machinery of British tabloid power, a machinery that had long preyed upon the private lives of royals, celebrities, and ordinary citizens alike. For Prince Harry, it was vindication years in the making, a statement that truth can claw its way through lies, and that accountability can reach even the most untouchable empires. Journalists who had once mocked him now wrote the word victory. Commentators who had branded him paranoid were forced to admit Harry was right. He had always been right. To understand the magnitude of this triumph, one must understand the battlefield on which it was fought. Prince Harry's war with the British press has been relentless, spanning decades and rooted in the trauma of his childhood. He was only 12 when his mother, Princess Diana, died in a Paris car crash while pursued by paparazzi. The flashing bulbs, the intrusive chase, the suffocating pressure of the media machine, all of it became a permanent scar. It was not just grief he carried, but fury at the press that had devoured his mother's life and, in his eyes, contributed to her death. As Harry grew older, the tabloids never loosened their grip. They hounded his teenage romances, mocked his mistakes, turned his military service into fodder. They painted caricatures of him in ink and headlines, reducing his humanity to sensational copy. When Meghan Markle entered his life, the cruelty metastasized into something darker: racism, misogyny, lies spread without hesitation. He reached his breaking point, and he fought back not only as a husband and father, but as a man determined to break the cycle that killed his mother. The settlement with Murdoch's news group was not just an isolated win, it was the crown jewel in a series of legal battles Harry has waged against tabloid institutions. But this case was the loudest, the most seismic. Settlements usually happen quietly in courtrooms, sealed behind legal jargon and financial arrangements. But this apology resounded loudly. Murdoch's tabloids did not only admit to hacking Harry, they admitted to tormenting him. They apologized, not with mere words, but with money. And tucked within the statement was another devastating admission. Their intrusions had extended to Princess Diana herself. For years, conspiracy swirled around the extent to which tabloids had chased, harassed, and spied upon Diana. She herself had spoken openly about being monitored, about the insatiable appetite for her private life. Now, decades later, her son has forced the industry to say what it long denied. They intruded. They invaded. They wronged her. For Harry, this was more than personal. It was generational. In that courtroom settlement, his mother's ghost was vindicated too. Rupert Murdoch's empire has always thrived on scandal, wielding tabloids as both weapon and shield. From Fleet Street to television networks, his grip over public opinion was likened to that of a kingmaker. Prime ministers courted him, celebrities feared him. His papers could make or break reputations in a single edition. But in recent years, cracks began to show. The 2011 phone hacking scandal had already shuttered News of the World, once the jewel in his crown. Investigations revealed widespread criminal practices, from hacking voicemails to bribing officials. Millions were paid in settlements, but the company always framed it as the fault of a few rogue reporters. Harry's case blew that narrative apart. This was not rogue behavior, it was systemic. It was sanctioned. It was deliberate. And now, Murdoch's flagship, The Sun, was forced to bow. For a man who built his empire on headlines, this was the worst headline of all. Behind the legal language of damages lies the true human cost. For Harry, the hacking and surveillance were not abstract violations, they were daily torments. Imagine living a life where your voicemail was not private, where intimate conversations could become front-page news, where friends and girlfriends could not trust a text message for fear it would be stolen and twisted into scandal, where grief was consumed as entertainment and joy was mocked as frivolity. Harry has spoken often about the toll on his mental health, about the panic attacks, the anxiety, the relentless sense of being hunted. Meghan, too, has described nights of tears and despair under the weight of tabloid lies. This victory, then, is not about money. It is about survival. It is about reclaiming dignity, stolen piece by piece. When news of the settlement broke, it reverberated not only through elite circles, but also among ordinary Britons who had long consumed tabloids without questioning their methods. Many admitted shock. They had laughed at the stories, bought the papers, clicked the headlines. Few realized that behind those stories were hacked voicemails, violated families, and illegal surveillance. Public opinion shifted. Suddenly, Harry's crusade was no longer dismissed as vendetta. It was seen as justice. Social media exploded with hashtags. #Harry was right, #justice, for Diana, #Murdoch exposed. For a nation conditioned to view the tabloids as cheeky entertainment, this was a reckoning. Legal scholars were quick to call the settlement historic. By forcing an admission and extracting such a substantial payment, Harry set a precedent that could inspire more victims to come forward. It is no secret that countless public figures were targeted during the hacking years: actors, athletes, even grieving parents of crime victims. Many settled quietly. But Harry's public fight opened the door to a second wave of accountability. If Murdoch's empire thought it had put hacking scandals behind it, Harry has dragged them back into the spotlight. And more may follow. This battle also redefined Harry himself. For years he was portrayed as the spare, the rebellious son, the runaway prince. The press painted him as lost, angry, reckless. But in this battle, he carved a new image for himself, not as a victim, but as a warrior for justice. This is the same Harry who walked behind his mother's coffin, the soldier who flew Apache helicopters in Afghanistan, the founder of the Invictus Games for wounded soldiers, the husband who stood up for his wife against racism. And now, the man who forced Rupert Murdoch's empire onto its knees. It is a metamorphosis, and it will be recorded in history not as gossip, but as legacy. Everything about this story circles back to Diana. The tabloids devoured her life, her fashion, her loves, her heartbreak. They stalked her, spied on her, exposed her vulnerabilities, and hounded her until the night of her death. For Harry, the wound never healed. In this settlement, he did not only fight for himself, he fought for her. He forced the very machine that destroyed her peace to confess its crimes. When the statement included mention of Diana, it sent chills across the world. The tabloids were not just guilty of tormenting a prince. They were guilty of intruding upon a princess who remains, decades later, the people's princess. What comes next remains uncertain. For Harry, the battle may not be over. He still has other cases pending against British tabloids. He has vowed to continue fighting until systemic change is achieved. For Murdoch's empire, the damage is immense. Public trust is shaken, financial losses mount, political influence wanes. For Britain, the reckoning has only begun. Citizens must ask themselves, what price do we pay for gossip? What damage is done when entertainment is built on cruelty? And how much longer can a culture of tabloid impunity survive? One headline summed it up perfectly: the prince beat the papers. And in doing so, he may have changed the story of both the British monarchy and the media forever. The image is stark. Tabloids, once all-powerful, forced onto their knees. A prince, once mocked, standing tall. A mother, once hunted, vindicated at last. This is not merely a settlement. It is not merely $12 million. It is history correcting itself, one case at a time. And it leaves us with the undeniable truth. Prince Harry has done what once seemed impossible. He has made the tabloids apologize. He has forced them to admit the torment. He has turned his pain into precedent. And in doing so, he has written a new chapter, not only for himself, not only for Diana, but for everyone who ever fell victim to the cruel machinery of tabloid abuse. To all my curious Sussex family, thank you all for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, and put a comment. Bye you then in the comments section.